3, 2, 1. We are live. Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so just give you a quick update on the UK news on the virus. And so I popped out today, Addy. Need a little bit of shopping. We haven't panic bought. The government's trying to stress to people that there's no need to panic buy. This country's not going to run out of food. The situation at supermarkets like your Walmart and that, people are now queuing outside. It is quite laid back. There's lines on the floor. One person in. They're not allowing families to go in now. It's one person, one trolley allowed in, yeah?
Okay.
There are some restrictions on what you can buy, like bulk buying. There's no bulk buying. But there was something of everything pretty much on the shelves, which is a lot better than it were 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. So people 2 weeks ago panic bought and stuff disappeared.
Nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing, mate.
Wow. For me here, it was literally just ramen noodles and toilet paper. So
yeah, you could get noodles. You could lots of other things, normal household things.
Yeah, it's like the least nutritious, item you could find in the store was gone.
Yeah, and some jarred products, sauces. No pasta, but lots of pasta sauce.
Oh wow.
Which is pretty,
Yeah.
But you have to sort of laugh at that, don't you? They are reporting very sadly that there's still probably 30% of all food that's been bought in the last 2 or 3 weeks is getting wasted. People are throwing it away, which is quite sad, isn't it?
Wow, that's a lot of food, isn't it?
Well, they've estimated that people in the store cupboards in this country, there's £1 billion worth of goods. £1 billion.
Wow. So you guys are not going to run out anytime soon.
No. We bought quite sensibly. We're lucky where we live. There's a local farmers market, which is it's basically a shop on a farm where you can buy fresh meat and veg. So I just go there like every couple of 3 days. There's not a lot of people there. We're keeping away from the supermarkets best we can, really.
Definitely, that's a good idea. And Yorkshire is, what's the population there? You guys are pretty big, huh? 5 million?
It is one of the biggest counties. I'm not quite sure. Do you know how England's structured? It's basically broke up into like your states, but just England itself. So we've got Yorkshire, Lancashire. These various counties, like so.
Definitely.
Okay.
So it sounds like you guys. I mean, as far as supplies go, you guys are fine. And what about the mood there? Are people? Is that changed a lot over the past since we talked last, or?
I think it's got people talking to each other. One of my neighbours, only I've briefly said hello to. We had a good chat today for about, I don't know, half an hour, talking about things in general, how it's affecting people's lives. I'll tell you what really was strange. I live in Wakefield, which is West Yorkshire. So I went at the Pets at Home. It's where you buy pet food, because we got 5 cats and a dog.
Oh, wow. And full house.
Yeah, full house, mate. Yeah, and me and the dog are at the bottom of the pecking order, trust me. Anyway, what was really strange, there obviously was not a lot of people out because it's sort of in the centre of the town. It was quiet. But something I haven't seen before over here, pretty much everyone was wearing masks.
Oh, wow, that's great. That is awesome. Yeah, and that's something that I think, we'll say Western nations are not used to doing. There's almost like a social, like self-consciousness about it. Whereas like in Japan and in Asia, they do this regularly.
They just commute, don't they? They wear them for the car pollution and things like that.
Yeah, they have to, because the geography there is so much more squished and condensed together population-wise. So they don't really have a choice.
So that was a bit strange. It's the first time I've seen that over here. And like I say, there was no big crowds or anything like that. It was you got plenty of room, so that was a bit strange. in the news. So our government have sort of issued some more instructions that this country, by the way, now, I think everyone's resigned themselves to the fact that we're on a 3-month lockdown now, not just 3 weeks. It's going to be at least 3 months. That's what everyone's talking about. So we're talking about midsummer or something like that. So they've said about travel restrictions, although they're not enforceable, what they've said is they don't want people traveling unnecessarily. And one of our police forces, like each county, like I'm in Yorkshire, Yorkshire's split into 4 parts. So you've got North, South, East, West Yorkshire. Yeah? So West Yorkshire has its own police force. One of the police forces, Derbyshire, which is a county in itself, has been heavily criticised. They've actually been, I believe, setting up roadblocks and stopping people and questioning where they're going. Now, the brief from the government didn't say that. You know, it's not a police state. These are suggestions, and these powers aren't really enforceable. There's even something in the news that one family of 5 or 6 people who were going shopping have been issued with a summons, which means they need to appear in court over charges about the 5 or 6 of them actually going shopping when the government stated that only one person should be going.
Wow.
Which is a bit strange.
Yeah, is that to send a message, or are they actually going to process through that?
Well, I don't see that going anywhere. I don't see it as a criminal offence. You know, it's very difficult to say. It's a very strange time, and a lot of people are talking about it now on TV. There was also a guy on the radio today. I believe his title was, he used to be Lord Chief Justice. I believe that's it. So he would have been, you know, the police, prison, court system. He would have been at the head of that in his time. So he was a very powerful man and very knowledgeable. And he was questioning this lockdown. You know, he's not in deniability. He's not denying a crisis. But what he's saying is that, yeah, the media's reporting this. And he believes the media itself has almost forced the lockdown, you know, with fear-mongering and negativity. And to the point where the government have thought, well, we need to do something and do something now.
What do you think about that?
Well, you know, he made me think. I mean, there's definitely people who lose their lives, which is very sad. And, you know, he wasn't about that. He wasn't, how he spoke wasn't heartless or thoughtless. You know, he weren't just dismissing people. But he was saying that, you know, we have flu every year that kills so many people. We don't know how many people it kills. And he was also questioning not the deaths, but what percentage of those deaths was actually the virus. Because like he says, it's affecting people who are really ill. So if someone, bless them, is dying of cancer, and at the end of their life, if they were to catch that virus, it'd finish them. Oh, yeah, what he's saying is the cancer has actually killed them people and not the virus. But that might well get reported as a death due to the virus. You see what I'm saying on percentages?
I do. I think that's being really pedantic, though. I mean, if the cancer killed him, I mean, why is he still alive when the virus hit him? You know, like the virus finished him off. So I would say the virus is the thing that killed him.
I think it's just questioning.
I understand that, yeah, for sure. And I call it the double-edged sword of democracy. That's what I call it. In the fact that in the East, in however you want to call it, however you want to describe or categorize their governments do have more power over their populace than they do over us in the United Kingdom and in the United States. So getting everybody on the same page is way harder.
Definitely. I think what they don't want is, with the police forces and that, they don't want people turning against the police
or against each other.
It's a difficult job But maybe it's, you know, you need to look at it. If somebody is traveling from their home to a location to walk their dog, and they're not near anyone else, they're not going to affect anyone else. And what you've also got to think of, Addy, and I'm sure this will apply in the States. A lot of people suffer with mental illness. You know, there's depression, anxiety. This whole situation, the fact it's affecting the whole world, will exasperate it. So lots of people now will be sat at home having panic attacks and worrying themselves.
Yeah,
so
I read that child abuse is on the rise, which makes complete sense in the situation.
Yeah, they've talked about that domestic violence. You know, people no longer at work, just being at home. That domestic violence is going to get worse. Some kids, like you said, their safe sanctuary is going to school.
Yeah,
you know, when they're at school, they're safe, they're protected. You know, they might have an horrendous home life, and they might also get fed at school. So that's something else. So these are consequences that people, if you have a normal life like myself, you know, we've got us animals and that, and I've got my daughter, and my missus is still going to work. You know, you might get a bit of tension or whatever or something like that, but you know, I can't imagine what it'd be like in other households.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I think people don't understand either. Is just because you have it great and you have all this space and it's not really a huge issue for you doesn't mean that it's not for other people. But you mentioned mental health issues, and I think that'll segue really nice into talking about your background. And because we did mention last time that you have PTSD, and you talked about depression and anxiety that people are dealing with now. And just speaking for myself, I do take antidepressants, and I do think they really help. Do you take any medication for your PTSD? Because last time you said that you have done talk therapy for about over 2.5 years now, and it's 2016, right? So almost 4 years. Do you take medication?
Right. Yeah, initially, obviously, like I said, I put myself through 3 or 4 months psychology, which did help. On the meds front, I'm going to do the disclaimer first, right?
Of course.
Obviously, in life, I know people who are on medication and have been on it a long time, and sometimes it becomes a crutch or whatever, and it's very difficult to see life without that. So my own experience is initially, I got injured with a prison service. So when I went to see my doctor,
that was your shoulder, correct?
It was, yeah. So you know, I was in a bad place, but I didn't realize that. So if I hadn't got injured, I was looking at a heart attack or stroke, no questions. So when I went to my doctor, my blood pressure was horrendous. My mental health deteriorated very fast, surprisingly enough, once I was away from work. And also my physical health weren't good. So my doctor was very concerned about that. I started taking some blood pressure medication, a really high dose, to bring that down. And she wanted to try me on some antidepressants. Now, like a lot of men, I'm quite pig-headed, me. So I sort of accepted the blood pressure medication, which, you know, I did need it. I was in quite a high-risk group as well. And initially, I declined it. Anyway, she tried me with probably maybe after a month. She put me on an SSRI, which a lot of people are on. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, I was on a month. And
okay. Yep.
It for me, it made me more anxious. I went from, you know, sort of a 3 or a 4 on the anxious scale to like a 10. So I discussed it with my doctor and I ditched that because I have to say my doctor was very supportive all the way through my sickness, really, really supportive, which made a massive difference. So
that's great.
Anyway, I got to a point where I weren't sleeping at all. I think it was somewhere around January 2016. So I've been off work since the previous September. And when I say I weren't sleeping, Addy, you know, I might doze off on the settee for 20 minutes in the day, and then something would wake me up, and that was it. I was angry. My mind was racing. And well, I honestly thought I was going to drop down dead myself. So I went back to my doctor and I said, look, I need something to help me sleep. Or can you give me something? So what she suggested was, it's another SSRI. It's called metazapine. Usually people who are anxious and that, they increase the dose. And once the dose goes up, the side effects of it become less. So she started me on a small dose purely. She said it will help you sleep. So I can remember now, I could describe the full 24 hours after I took that first dose of treatment. Yeah. I went out like a light.
Wow.
I was talking to my missus. I just suddenly said, I've got to go to bed. I woke up 6 o'clock next day, took the dog out. I felt terrible. I really felt awful. I felt like we're floating, trippy. You know, it was like, I've never really taken many drugs in my life. You know, I used to smoke a bit of weed when it was weed, grass, a herb, 30 years ago. So I didn't feel good on it. However, I had some sleep. So I took that for 2 weeks and I was getting sleep, but I did not like the effects. So I went back to my doctor and I sacked it. I just said, look, you know, oh, I forgot to tell you. So you asked me whether it was on drugs. Although I couldn't use the gym because I injured my shoulder, I was going to the gym and doing everything else. So I would work one half of my body. I was going every day, Addy. I got a bit addicted to it. My missus, you know, she kicked me out of the house at 8:30, said, you need to go to the gym. I was so angry. And I'd come out of the gym, I'd be physically sick, sit in my car crying, you know, emotional outburst, and then I'd go home and away you go. But after this 2 weeks, I didn't tell my missus. I decided to bin the blood pressure medication as well. Myself, in my head, and I know this is not a sensible thing to do. I'm not telling people. I was also on a statin, you know, for your cholesterol.
Is that a blood thinner?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll look it up. Continue, please.
Yeah. So I was on a statin and I don't think that was making me feel well. So I am not advocating anyone not taking meds. Just in my mind, myself, I thought, you know, while ever I'm on blood pressure medication or whatever, you know, it's not making me feel safe or healthy, but without it, you know, I've got to do something to make myself healthy. So I binned all my tablets.
So it did work out for you then, the taking medication, because I know everybody, you know, everybody's different. When it comes to that.
Do you know the thing where, Addy? The first time I took the metazapine, after 2 weeks, I was sleeping, yeah, which is what I needed. However, I remembered the first day I took it and I thought, how can your body react so badly and you can feel so bad, and 2 weeks later, you feel like you do now? So for me, so what I did then, I binned all my meds. I got out walking with the dog a couple of times a day. I had a neighbour. This is another thing, Addy, that I never mentioned. When I said I had continued therapy, my neighbour, he was an ex-squaddy. You know that word now, don't you? He's an ex-soldier.
Yes, sir.
So he'd had some bad life experiences. He lived 2 doors from me. So every day for the next 3 or 4 years, I'd knock on. We'd take the dogs out 4 times a day for half an hour. During that time, we talk about prison. We talk about his life as a squaddy, politics, and putting the world right. And after a couple of years, you know, I said to him, you know, having seen some of the bad things he'd been through as a soldier, did you never think about going therapy? And he says, this is my therapy. he says, we've been having therapy for the last 2 years. You know, I've talked to you about things I've never talked about and how they affected me. So that's helping me.
That's awesome.
So for people, if I had money, Addy, I'd tell you what I'd do, mate. Where I live now, I'd buy a little 2-bedroomed house. I'd get volunteers, you know, so people could drop in during the day, people who have anxiety or just want to talk or get away from things. And I'd just chat to people all day. You know, you don't need to go and see a professional. You don't need to see a counselor. You just have to feel comfortable with someone, and away you go, and it starts flowing. So
yeah, and I think it really helps too when people are talking to someone who is maybe not a perfect third party and completely neutral, but maybe someone who's not in your everyday life, or you don't see 6 days a week like your wife or your siblings.
Well, exactly. You're not involved, are you? You know, I've always been a people person anyway. I get on well with people. I can empathize. Before we finish, just remind me about the good news, because we ought to have a little bit of, you know, something cheerful every day. Anyway, you know, and that's what I do. And if I got millions, I'd have a little house in Sheffield, and I'd have one somewhere else. You know, just so people could come. No pressure, no professionals. Just have a brew and sit down and talk, and maybe just get away from the life for an hour, because that's what people sometimes need.
Definitely. Well, I hope you do fully realize that and actualize that one day. But did you want to switch over into talking more about your prison experience? Maybe you could go into. Yeah, go ahead.
You tell me what you'd like to know. Anything.
Well, I would like to ask you about Danny G. If you could give a little story on or explanation on who Danny G is.
Right. For the people watching, I'll give you a brief outline. In the prison system, there is probably less than 1% of the prison population. So 1 in 100, by whatever skills they've got, and I'll explain skills, they can be problematic. So, for instance, Danny G, very, very powerful lad. If you look at the American prisons, yeah, they took all the weights off the yards, didn't they?
Yeah, they're weapons.
Correct. Plus the fact, if you're going to have to fight someone, you don't want to have to fight someone who's been pumping iron on exercise yard for the last 10 years, do you? It makes no sense. So in the British prison system, a lot of prisons, can you hold fire 1 second? Don't go away.
We are on a quick break. Take your time, Sam. I will give everybody an update on how things are going in Oregon right now. I'm getting text on my phone from the Oregonian. Providence St. Vincent and Providence Portland Medical Center have started administering remdesivir. It's a drug developed to fight the Ebola virus as part of a clinical trial that doctors hope can help treat the coronavirus. That's going on here in Oregon. We are live here with Sam Samworth, ex-prison guard / officer from Her Majesty's Prison, Strangeways, also called HMP Manchester. Sam, do you want to pick up where you left off, please?
Yeah. Sorry, mate. That one of the cats knocking on the door.
Oh, that'll happen. That happened to me before the other day.
Okay, so we're talking about problematic prisoners. So we have gyms in our prisons, and there's some monsters, and he was a monster, very powerful. You know, probably a genuine bench pressing 180 kilos, squatting a couple 100 kilos. So he's a very powerful lad. But aligned to that, been in the prison system a long time, and there is problematic prisoners that the prison system creates. Yeah.
And you said he's about 18 stone?
I would say unfit, probably 18, 19 stone. As a fit lad, maybe 17, but extremely powerful.
Yeah. And for US viewers, that's about 240 pounds.
But he had, it's the mentality of these people. Like I say, people who've been in the prison system and maybe been abused, you know, had a lot of beatings as a young lad or whatever. So they kicked back at the system. Now, there was a lot of big lads in strange ways who, when it comes to confrontation and restraining them, you know, it maybe take you a little bit longer because of the size. But the thing that Danny G had was the mentality as well. So not only was a big, powerful lad, he had that mindset, which is a dangerous thing. Other prisoners that, you know, might come into that very small percentage, prolific self-harmers, you know, that they can cause massive problems for you within the prison system. So he's one of these prisoners, Danny G. Now, we've had him in our prison quite a long time. And through the book, I was talking to a prison officer who had worked with Danny G when he was a young lad. And he said, you know, he was at their prison for a couple of years. He said he could be problematic. He said, but a lot of it was how you managed him. But you could also see that one day he was going to be a big problem for the prison service. Now, in America, if you had somebody like him, somebody powerful with a mindset that could hurt people, in your jails, you can like use what we call the liquid cosh. So
liquid cosh.
Yeah, let me explain. So I've seen the American prisons. You know, if you got somebody like Danny G in a cell kicking off, first of all, you got mace. You can use mace or parva spray, can't you, in prison? It's classed as a firearm over here, and we don't have it in prisons. It's not available. You can't use it.
You can't use pepper spray.
So what they would do in one of your prisons, they would get all the lads that look like some sort of offensive American football team type squad. Yeah. They'd go in with shields, splatter him, and then they'd give him a big whack of something, an injection, and that'd be him out of the game for a couple of days, yeah?
Tranquilize him.
Yeah. You used to be able to tranquilize people in British prisons, not so much now, and it has to be done with the permission of a doctor. So when you've got someone like Danny G, very powerful, kicking off, it's a case of sort of matching his physicality with a number of staff.
And would he oil himself up to prepare for fights?
He will have done in the past.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do it in America. That's what they do. Like, again, it's that mindset. Most people, you know, you'd go in a cell, restrain them, game over, maybe a minute, yeah? And then they become passive. The professionals, if you want to call it, would use body creams, shampoo, you know, shampoo on the floor. So when you go in the cell, you're going to be slipping and sliding. Yeah, cover the cells in shampoo so you can't grab hold of them, you can't restrain them. So there you go.
Wow.
Anyway.
And Bronson did that too, right?
Right, Bronson, yeah.
But do you want to tell the story of, because you were in on it, right? When you and like, what was it, 10 other dudes were tasked
11 with Danny G when we went into strip search him.
Strip search. Okay, what happened there?
He was in a special cell. A special cell in our segregation unit, you know, like the blocks or the shoe over there. They have what they call a strip cell. There's nothing in it. There's no toilet. They put a bedpan in there, you know, if you need a number 2, or a bottle if you want to have a pee, and maybe some water, but there's nothing else in there. There's no ligature points. There's nothing they can harm themselves with other than smashing the cells off the walls.
So ligature is something you can use to strangle yourself, for people that don't know what a ligature is.
Yeah. Well, they usually have in there anti-ligature blankets, which is a really thick blanket. They're almost indestructible. You certainly won't be able to tie it around your neck.
Oh, wow.
So he's in this cell. So I get a phone call. I was part of the tornado team at Strangeways. So each individual prison has to have so many officers or guards or cops trained to deal with riots. You know, usually volunteer. Everyone likes that. A bit of extra training. You get all your kit on, your helmet, your shields or whatever, and away you go. Every prison officers do that training because it gives you confidence. So I got called in as part of a team of 12 officers. These are all male officers. Now, these are volunteers, Addy. That's very important. If I knew I was going in to restrain Danny G and I could pick 11 other staff in the jail, you know, those 11 staff and myself would have managed him. You know, might have been a little bit of a struggle, but we'd have managed it. So you got to remember that these people have volunteered. We were called in on a Saturday night. So, you know, if you're on a day off, Saturday night's party night, isn't it? Down to the bar, a few beers, something like that. So we all went into the jail. Now, I'm a realist. I know this lad. I know his mindset. And when I got there, I had butterflies in my stomach. Because, you know, it's what he'd done. He was in this special cell and he'd got a lighter and he was threatening to set the cell on fire. Yeah.
Okay.
So they called us guys in, 12 of us. We got kitted up. That's full gear, helmets with visors, arm pads, elbow pads, shin pads, gloves, big boots, the whole 9 yards. And it was a very, shall I say, jovial gathering. I'm putting my gear on and looking at people who are laughing and joking. Yeah. I'm also, and again, Addy, you got to understand me here. I'm also looking at people because they have volunteered who were not up to the job. Before we went in, I knew that they weren't up to the job. Yeah. But they volunteered, so you can't really say anything. Anyway, I don't want to keep you up all night. We ended.
You're good, man. I got nowhere to be. This is so fascinating. Continue, please.
So we had a guy, yeah, who didn't particularly like me, who was in charge. Now, 6 of these guys are CNR instructors. What a CNR instructor is, they're the people within Manchester Prison, strange ways, who teach the other staff how to restrain prisoners. So they've had extra training. Yeah. So out of the 12, 6 are CNR instructors. So you would think they know their stuff, mate, and they'd be up for it, wouldn't they? And the other 6, me being one of them, are volunteers who turned up. So this guy who's taking the briefing, and again, size isn't everything in prison. You know, some of the most difficult, toughest people I've ever met in my life have been really small. However, you know, I have got a certain physicality. So this guy who's giving the briefing, the 6 experts, CNR instructors are going in first, yeah? And we used to have little shields, about yay big. So they're going in single file. So one at the front with a shield, one behind, hands on shoulder, hands on shoulder. I have said this before, like the human centipede.
Right.
As it. Have you seen that movie?
No, sir, and I will not.
Good lad. I've only seen very small bits, and let me tell you, you're doing the right thing. So these guys are going in single file, 6 of them with 2 shields. The other 6 lads, me being one of them, hands on their shoulders. So we're in one long line, yeah? The guy who's give the briefing looks at me, because there was a lot of debris in this cell, and says, "You're taking the brushing." So he was trying to insult me. What he said was, the other 11 were going to deal with Danny G, and I could sweep the cell up, yeah?
Okay, I got you.
We didn't get on, but, you know, I thought,
yeah,
okay,
he wanted you to be the equipment manager.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, we went in, best laid plans. The first thing that no one had planned on, and I've got to tell you about Danny G, this special cell, it has observation panels on the ceiling. So there's some stairs at the side of the cell, on the outside of the cell. So you can go up and look in through the ceiling and see what people are doing. Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
safety precaution, right? So you can see
Of
what's
course
going
it is.
on
Of course
before
it
you
is.
go in.
But
Yeah.
he has blocked these. He's climbed up this bare cell. Yeah.
What
Climbed
did
up.
he, with his shirt or clothing, or what did he block him with?
Wet paper.
Oh, okay.
Maybe toilet paper.
Mm.
So we can't see him. We're going in blind. But we've got this plan. We're in this human centipede. A member of staff opens the door and in we go. First point of fact, the lights were out. He turned the lights out, Danny G, because he was asleep. So no one planned on that. So everyone goes piling in the dark, you know, all fumbling, not knowing what they're doing.
Into the bear cave.
There you go. The other thing was on the bed head, he was laid the wrong way. So these 11 staff dives on him, yeah, 6 or 7 of them on his upper body, or so they thought. The others on the legs, and there's me with my brush. So
bringing up the rear.
Yeah. So the light comes on. I start sweeping the debris. However, it became very apparent that 11 wasn't enough because he was trying to get up. So he was laid upside down. He was laid the wrong way around. So I ended up with another lad, another Yorkshireman. So that's 2 of us in there. So that's good stuff in it because we're made of sterner stuff in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
We ends up looking him in the face. Now, I've got to tell you, we've got helmets on and these uniforms. We also had balaclavas on, so you can only see our eyes. So we're looking down at him and he looks up, and we won't use the profanities, but basically he says, you dirty whatevers coming in when I'm asleep. He says, you're having it. So at this point, give a little giggle me because the nerves are kicking in now.
It's game time.
And then what happened, as a youngster, Addy, have you ever been anywhere and with your friends and something's happened and you've all ran off?
Oh, yeah, of course.
And you're all trying to fight to get to the front because nobody wants to be at the back.
Right? It's like you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your friend who's outrunning the bear.
I like that. I've never heard that. I like that. Yeah, that's a good analogy. Anyway, so everyone tries to get out of the cell. People panicked. We were almost out of the cell. Me and the other Yorkshire guy just going out. He grabbed an officer who was as big as me by his belt and he pulled him back in.
Oh, gosh.
Now, you know, when you see the cartoons when somebody's running past the big bear or something and it grabs them and the legs carry on going, that's what it was like, Addy. So he's dragged this guy back in. So we have to go back in. So we wrestle the officer off him, and then there's 4 of us. There's the other Yorkshire lad and 2 other lads in the cell, and it now, you know, it's become a bit of a stand-up fight now. Admittedly, you know, we have got helmets on and pads and gloves, but, you know, it still weren't a good place to be with this guy because now he's really pissed. Anyway, bit of a stand-up fight. The other Yorkshire lad caught him with one on the chin. He went down. We were on him like a pack of wolves. Very briefly, this is self-preservation. I mean, on him, bam, 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 bam. You know, maybe 10, 15 seconds, up, backed off, cell door shut, we're out of the cell. Woo. Yeah? The other 8 guys, mate, were nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
They're in a room, them, already getting their kit off. Bear in mind, we might have to go back in that cell. So there was a lot of bad words, a lot of bad feeling.
I could imagine, only imagine.
But what I forgot to tell you was, the CNR instructors, you know, the 6 guys that trained everyone else, our helmets, advisors that came down fixed, they had goggles on. You know, like your SWAT? They look like SWAT uniforms, German helmets with goggles. Danny G had a pair of goggles. He'd captured one. So he's now in the cell with the goggles on, dancing up and down, you know. So one of the managers says to me, "Come with me." So there's a little thing where you can see through the door. So he says, "Danny, give me the goggles." So he says, bear in mind he had a lighter that we were supposed to be taking off him. "Give me some burn." That's tobacco.
Burn.
So what you have to think now is, we've been in the cell. He's had a bit of an hiding. You know, you de-escalate, or do you get your team kitted back up? 8 of whom are not interested in going back in. So, you know, bit of banter between the manager, myself, and him. He gave him some burn. He handed the goggles over, and that was the end of the night. But that incident sums the prison service up. There's lots of people doing the job who are good prison officers, but contrary to popular belief, they're not all big lads and they're not all fighters. And there's also a lot of female staff who are really good officers as well. You know, you've got a mix. If you were to look at your family, you know, uncles, aunties, friends, neighbours, any one of them could be a prison officer. So there you go.
Yeah, I never knew that, and it's interesting you say that, because I think most people don't think of prison officers that way. I think most people think of prison guards and people who work in the prison, regardless of what they do, as someone who looks like you, Sam. You know, a big bald guy.
Unfortunately, it's very cliched, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they do look like me, 6 foot 18 stone with a bald head.
Yeah,
but that's
but
not the case.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
So if you guys did have that all-star team of you and, you know, basically, you know, 10, 11 other guys who are about your size or fighters, you know, as you said, the psychological is more important. Oh, technique. Okay. Yeah. And I've been, like, last year, I was doing a lot of reading about, like, jujitsu, and I did, like, 6 weeks of training with Marines when I was in Japan. And that is very much, it uses like leverage and angles and geometry. So smaller people can outmaneuver and defeat larger opponents.
This is the thing. When you taught CNR, control and restraint, it's basically locks, wrist locks, arm locks, standing or laying. It's like bits from martial arts, bits from jiu-jitsu. But the thing is, a normal prisoner, most normal prisoners, 3 staff would go in to restrain a prisoner. One would protect the head, you know. So if I went in, I might end up with a head. You're protecting the head, you know, so they're not banging it on anything. And the other 2 lads or lasses would take an arm each and put them in locks. So it's very coordinated. You know, if I was on an arm, I'd be concentrating on what I was doing.
Right.
Usually you take them to the floor because it's easier. And most of the time, be on the floor, maybe 30 seconds, bit of a wrestle, into arm locks, head protected. That's it, game over. Most prisoners at that point would stop struggling. And it's safer. You know, 30 years ago, with like your Bronson, who was a street fighter, you might send your 6 biggest cops guards in there. You might knock teeth out and break noses, you know, in order to try and... So it's gone away from that. It is a safe system of practice.
A lot more clinical, a lot more defensive instead of offensive in terms of controlling and restraining out of control people.
Correct.
Yeah, and just related to that too, I watch this guy on YouTube sometimes, the Lion Whisperer. And so he's like an expert on lions, and he talks about the psychology of the lions because he spends so much time with them. And the dominant lioness is actually the smallest lioness, which is kind of funny. And he said that she is even more dominant than the male lions. Although if they lose their patience, they just use their sheer size to push her out of the way. But yeah, but I thought that was interesting how an expert in animal dynamics, like, you know, a very social animal such as lions, would say that, you know, basically the dominance has way more to do with psychology than the the physical part of it. But once you combine the two, like you do with a Bronson or with a Danny G, then that's just, you know, like you said, that's the 1%. Someone who's not only physically gifted, but psychologically extremely dominant and, out of control as well.
Of course, somebody who has that mindset. You know, I remember somebody once saying to me, I mean, there'd be lots of instances, we could talk all night, but I think it was on a radio interview when the book came out. And the guy was a really good interviewer. He let me speak, let me say my bit. He said, okay, last one. Who's the toughest guy you've had to deal with? So, okay, have a think. I didn't say Danny G. Okay. Toughest guy, 5'7", 10.5 stone, mentally unwell, 30 staff to restrain him.
Whoa. Do you have time to tell this story now, Sam?
Yeah. I've got about 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, if you think that's enough time.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we could have a night just talking about mental health in prison because it is a really, really sad place.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
you know, we'll have another chat about that.
No doubt.
I'll tell you about one guy, though.
We can talk about my friend Ptsd Watson, too, when we do that. But
yeah,
definitely.
I've seen. Is that your friend?
Yeah, he's...
So how did you hook up with him?
How did I hook? Oh, it was actually via Sean. And
well, I saw him on Sean's podcast.
It was quite serendipitous, actually. And I hit him up, and he was like, because I was in London and talking to Sean, and he was like, yeah, man, come through. And yeah, I interviewed him again, actually, for the second time. New Year's. Not him, but another, actually, a former Scotland Yard detective. And Ptsd hosted it at his studio. But unfortunately, I think I told you this yesterday, he got recalled in January.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw it.
Yeah, so I've been just in correspondence with him and doing letters and stuff. But yeah, just in terms of the mental health thing, we can definitely touch on him. And if people want to check out his channel too, I'll definitely put that in the YouTube description box, as well as my Ptsd Watson videos. I talk about what he's relaying to me in letters and his words of encouragement for people, which is great because a lot of people are in contact with him. And I think it's very important because a lot of these prisoners just don't really have anyone, you know?
Well, I've got a couple of letters to write. Somebody on Twitter I was following, he's an American guy. He's done a lot of time and he put a link to a site. So I went on there, I picked one man, one woman. The guy's doing life, and the woman's got about, I think, another 15 years. So I'm going to send. I chatted to him, you know, via private messages. So I'm going to write to them two people because I said, if I write from England, will they be able to write back or whatever? And he says, yeah, you know, they get facilities so they can write to people. So I figured that'd be doing my little bit.
They're both in the States?
Yeah, they're both in the States. I thought that'd be doing my bit, like, so.
Yeah, that's awesome, definitely. And if they have contact info too that you want to share, if anyone wants to get in touch with them, I can definitely share that in the box too. Just let me know.
What? I'll get back to the guy.
Yeah. You said 10.5 stone?
Link. Say that again, mate.
Oh, no, I interrupted you. Go ahead, Sam.
No, it's okay. If I get back to the guy and get the link, would you put the link up? Because all I did, I asked him about it, clicked on, took me through to a few people. I mean, to be fair, I think some of them are looking for love or something. However, you know, I picked a guy. It's all right, Stevie. I picked a guy, like I say, who's doing 30 years, and the lassie's doing like 15 years. So
yeah, definitely.
Just looking for pen friends.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is the perfect time to do it too, because everyone has, you know, is in pretty much the same position, more or less.
Write a letter every day, no problem, couldn't I? It's not like there's lots of things going on, so.
Right, definitely. I will definitely add that in the description, Sam. Just give me the links and I can do it. We'll chat after. Did you want to get to the other dude who was a problem for you? Or
well, yeah. Well, we'll have 5 minutes on him. then I'll have to call time. But we'll definitely
tell you what. Let's save it then, so people get the full story with all the details. We'll do that
let's do
tomorrow if you have time to chat tomorrow.
Full show on mental health, eh?
Definitely, yeah. So tomorrow we'll be talking about mental health.
Can we finish on a positive note?
Yes, of course, Sam. Go for it.
Right. So my missus works in. She's a carer. She works in a dementia home. So the people are pretty much all over 70. There's one old lady who's 100. She's been there 15 years. She's got no family or anyone who visits her. So you know, it's when she talks about her work and that. I sometimes find it quite upsetting, you know, because these people, most of the time, they don't know where they are or whatever, but they do recognize things, and occasionally, you know, for small periods, they'll recognize relatives. Anyway, she phoned me today. So one of our local stores, Morrison's, so just like a Walmart, yeah, they've gone to the home, and they don't have produce from these people. They've gone to the home, they've gone in. They've taken buns and cakes for the old people and the staff. They've taken flowers in. They've stocked the kitchens. This is all for free. And they've sort of thanked all the staff for the work they do as well. And given everyone Easter cards. Wow. So what we're finding is that, you know, these good things are starting to happen.
Yeah.
I found it very touching.
That's awesome, Sam. Yeah, it seems that you are hearing more and more stories of people coming together in a crisis like this, which I think is good. And I think it was confusing too, because I think people didn't actually know how big of a crisis it actually was. But I do think everybody's waking up to it, and then I hope we can continue this trend of, I guess, coming together and helping each other out and helping out the weak among us.
Be nice. Too much negativity, mate.
I agree, Sam. Sam, thanks so much for your time today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Looks like you got a beautiful sunset to enjoy.
It's been a lovely day.
Awesome. So again, we will be alive tomorrow, barring any sort of huge dramatic changes in world politics or our schedules, which neither of us foresee happening. We will be talking about mental health tomorrow, in prison and out of prison. I can talk more about Ptsd Watson and his story, and Sam will share the awesome story of the 150-pounder who took 30 people to take him down. Until tomorrow, Sam, really enjoyed talking with you, and have a great evening.
Stay healthy, mate.
Appreciate it. Cheers, brother.
See you later, mate.